Most teenagers spend their days navigating school hallways, friendships, and the challenges of growing up. But for Carly Madison Gregg, life took a turn no parent could ever imagine, a turn that would end in tragedy and make national headlines. On March 19, 2024, in Brandon, Mississippi, a quiet home became the scene of a shocking crime that would forever change a family and a community. Carly Gregg, just 14 years old, retrieved a .357 Magnum from beneath her mother's mattress and shot her mother, Ashley Smylie, dead. Minutes later, she also fired at her stepfather, Heath Smylie, wounding him but not killing him. The sequence of events stunned law enforcement and the public alike, especially given her age. Surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and phone records painted a chilling portrait of the moments leading up to and following the shooting. Authorities quickly arrested Carly, and the case ignited widespread attention. A teenager committing such an act against her own family prompted questions that stretched far beyond the courtroom. How could a child commit murder? What role did mental health, family dynamics, and adolescent development play? And most importantly, how would the justice system respond to a minor capable of such extreme violence? If you're here for a detailed, factual exploration of true crime stories that go beyond the headlines, consider subscribing now. On Behind the Yellow Tape, we examine the psychology, the circumstances, and the aftermath of crimes that shock us to our core. Carly Gregg's arrest marked the beginning of a legal and emotional journey unlike any other. Facing first-degree murder charges and a court eager to balance justice with her age, she became the focus of a tense trial, one that would ultimately decide whether a teenager could be sentenced to spend the rest of her life behind bars. The events of that day were just the beginning. Behind closed doors, in courtrooms and correctional facilities, Carly's story would unfold in ways that challenge everything we think we know about crime, youth, and punishment. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with tension, as the case of Carly Madison Gregg moved forward. For a teenager just 14 years old, the stakes could not have been higher. The community, still reeling from the shocking murder of Ashley Smylie and the attempted shooting of Heath Smylie, watched closely as the legal process began to unfold. The prosecution presented a detailed account of that tragic day, relying on security footage, eyewitness testimony, and the sequence of text messages Carly sent in the minutes following the shooting. Each piece of evidence painted a chilling portrait. A young girl, seemingly normal in appearance, capable of planning and executing a violent attack against her own family. As the trial progressed, the defense emphasized her age, arguing that Carly's adolescent development, combined with psychological factors, should influence how the court viewed her culpability. Experts in adolescent psychology were brought in to describe the way a young brain processes impulse, decision-making, and consequences. Yet the severity of the crime weighed heavily on the jury, who had to grapple with the unthinkable: a teenager taking the life of her own mother and threatening her stepfather. The trial culminated in a verdict that sent shockwaves through Rankin County, Mississippi. Carly Gregg was found guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, attempted murder, and evidence tampering. The judge's decision to try her as an adult meant she would face the full consequences of her actions under the law. Sentencing was swift and unflinching. Carly received 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murder and attempted murder charges, plus an additional 10 years for tampering with evidence. For a child barely into adolescence, this meant a future entirely confined within prison walls, her life outside effectively erased. The case ignited national debate. How does society hold a minor accountable for such heinous acts? Can justice truly be served through life imprisonment for a teenager? And while the law addressed accountability, it left unanswered the deeper questions of why a child could commit such an act and what might have been done to prevent it. The courtroom may have delivered its verdict, but the story of Carly Gregg and the consequences she would face was far from over. After the verdict and sentencing, the legal battle surrounding Carly Gregg was far from over. While the courtroom had delivered its decision, her defense team immediately pursued motions for a new trial and appeals, arguing that her age, psychological state, and the handling of certain evidence had not been adequately considered. Legal experts emphasize that cases involving minors are particularly complex, as courts must balance accountability with developmental and mental health considerations. In Carly's case, questions about impulse control, adolescent brain development, and potential influence from her environment became central to the ongoing legal discussion. The defense claimed that certain procedural errors during the trial, including jury instructions and how mental health evidence was presented, could have affected the outcome. They highlighted how a teenager's understanding of consequences differs significantly from that of an adult, and argued that sentencing a 14-year-old to life without parole required a level of scrutiny and consideration that, in their view, had not been fully applied. Prosecutors, on the other hand, maintained that the evidence was clear, the crimes were premeditated, and the public and familial impact demanded that Carly face the maximum consequences available under the law. The appeals process extended into state courts, eventually reaching the Mississippi Supreme Court, where arguments focused on whether Carly's constitutional rights were fully protected and whether the trial appropriately weighed her age and mental state. Legal analysts noted that cases like this often set precedent, raising critical questions about how the justice system should handle juveniles who commit severe violent crimes. During this period, public opinion was deeply divided. Some viewed Carly as a monster in the making, fully responsible for her actions, while others emphasized her youth and the potential for rehabilitation, questioning whether a lifetime in prison was truly justice. These debates underscored the tension between the law, morality, and societal expectations when a child is capable of unimaginable violence. If this story has kept you on edge and makes you question justice and youth accountability, take a moment to like and share this video. These are the stories that challenge not just the courts, but how we think about crime, consequence, and responsibility. Meanwhile, Carly's life behind bars awaited, a place where the next chapter of her story and the reality of long-term incarceration for a teenager would begin to unfold. Life behind bars for Carly Gregg is a reality few can truly imagine. At just 14 years old, she was sentenced to life without parole, meaning her entire adolescence and every year of adulthood would unfold inside the confines of a correctional facility. While she is housed in a youthful offender unit within the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility, the environment is far from typical. It is structured, highly monitored, and designed to restrict freedom while attempting to manage behavioral and developmental needs. Yet the psychological weight of spending decades in prison begins immediately, even for someone so young. Daily life in a youthful offender unit is regimented. Cells are small, time outside is strictly scheduled, and interactions with other inmates and staff are limited. Education, therapy, and rehabilitation programs may be offered, but the reality of long-term confinement shapes every aspect of existence. For Carly, routines that might seem ordinary to adults, attending classes, participating in sports, or socializing with peers, are now replaced by schedules dictated entirely by the institution. Every moment is regulated, every movement observed, and every choice constrained. The emotional toll of this environment is profound. Adolescence, a time normally characterized by exploration, independence, and social growth, is instead spent under constant supervision. Psychologists warn that long-term incarceration at such a formative age can intensify feelings of isolation, frustration, and despair. For Carly, the future she might have imagined, friendships, education, career, and freedom, is replaced with an unbroken succession of days behind concrete walls. Her case also sparks wider debates about juvenile justice. Critics argue that life imprisonment for a teenager raises ethical questions about rehabilitation, brain development, and the potential for change. Supporters maintain that the severity of her crime necessitates such measures, both for accountability and public safety. Inside the prison walls, Carly Gregg's reality is stark. Each day reinforces the permanence of her sentence and the weight of a childhood cut short by violence and consequence. Time here does not heal. It confines, shapes, and exacts a punishment that is relentless and unyielding. A sentence that, for some, could be considered worse than death itself. As the years continue to pass within the confines of the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility, the story of Carly Gregg extends far beyond headlines and courtroom drama. Her life, now fully shaped by incarceration, serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of a single moment of violence. For the community, the victim's family, and the public at large, the impact of her actions will be felt for decades. The murder of Ashley Smylie and the shooting of Heath Smylie left a permanent scar, one that no legal sentence can fully erase. Inside prison, Carly's days follow a rhythm dictated entirely by the institution. There are no spontaneous moments, no true privacy, and no opportunities to reclaim the childhood stolen from her. For someone so young at the time of the crime, the sentence of life without parole effectively erases any hope of growing up outside the walls. Psychologists and criminal justice experts often point to cases like this to highlight the tension between punishment and rehabilitation, particularly when juveniles are involved. The system has ensured accountability, yet questions linger about the human cost of both the victims and the offender. Society continues to grapple with the moral and ethical questions raised by Carly Gregg's sentence. Was justice served by condemning a 14-year-old to spend her life in confinement? Could rehabilitation have been a more appropriate path? These questions are uncomfortable but necessary, forcing reflection on how the legal system treats minors capable of unimaginable violence. If this exploration of crime, consequence, and the justice system has made you think, consider subscribing to Behind the Yellow Tape, liking this video, and sharing it. Stories like these challenge us to confront uncomfortable truths about youth, accountability, and the long-term impact of our choices. Ultimately, Carly Gregg's tale is a reminder that crime does not end with a verdict. The consequences ripple outward, shaping lives, communities, and even the offender herself. Life behind bars is more than a punishment. It is a reality that transforms every day, leaving little room for escape and forcing reflection on what it truly means to pay for one's actions.